It was supposed to be a regular Tuesday afternoon. The sky was overcast, the kind of day that made everything feel slower than usual. I had just come back from work, juggling my keys and grocery bags when I noticed the small puddle forming beneath the kitchen sink. At first, I thought maybe I had dropped something, but when I opened the cabinet, it was obvious, the pipe had started leaking again. It wasn't the first time either. The landlord had promised to fix it weeks ago but never followed through. Frustrated, I called the maintenance service listed on the fridge. A man picked up with a calm voice, said he could swing by within the hour. I didn't think twice. When the doorbell rang, I was expecting someone grumpy and in a rush. But standing there was a tall, easygoing guy, probably in his early 30s. He had kind eyes, a relaxed smile, and wore a blue uniform that read Quick Fix Plumbing. He introduced himself as Daniel. There was nothing unusual about it, just a guy doing his job. He walked in, tools in hand, and got straight to work under the sink while I busied myself putting away the groceries. We barely exchanged more than a few polite words at first. But something about the silence between us felt aware. Not awkward, not forced. Just present. As the minutes stretched into an hour, our casual small talk turned into deeper conversation. Daniel talked about growing up in a small town, his love for fixing things, and how he recently moved to the city for a fresh start. I told him about my hectic job, my lonely apartment, and my partner who was constantly away on business trips. I don't know why I said so much. Maybe it was because he actually listened. Maybe it was because I hadn't felt that in a long time. The rain started outside, light at first, then heavier. Daniel glanced toward the window and mentioned he might wait it out a bit before heading to his next stop. I offered him coffee, more out of politeness than anything else. He accepted with a grateful smile, and before I knew it, we were both sitting at the small dining table, coffee in hand, talking like old friends who somehow just met. There was no plan. Nothing premeditated. But the air between us had shifted, quiet but undeniable. A subtle tension built in the room, one neither of us spoke about. Just as I looked down to grab my cup, my phone buzzed. A text from my partner, delayed another night. Sorry. I stared at it, the words blurring in my mind, and when I looked up, Daniel was still watching me, not judging, just waiting. I should have asked him to leave. I should have ended the night right there. But what happened next changed more than just a leaky pipe. It revealed cracks I hadn't noticed before, ones that went far deeper than the kitchen sink. I looked at Daniel again, and for a second, I forgot he was someone I had just met an hour ago. He leaned back in his chair, sipping the coffee slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. The rain outside hit the windows harder now, and the apartment felt quieter than usual. It was strange how peaceful the moment seemed, almost too quiet for what was really going on in my head. My partner's text kept flashing in my mind like a warning I didn't know how to respond to. Another delay. Another night alone. Another moment where I felt more like a roommate in my own relationship than an actual partner. Daniel glanced toward the leak under the sink and said casually, I tightened everything up, but honestly, it looks like it'll just keep happening unless someone replaces the whole line. I nodded, not really thinking about plumbing anymore. He must have noticed, because his voice softened. You okay? That question hit harder than I expected. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even said with any pressure. But in that moment, it felt like the most real thing I had heard in weeks. I nodded again, trying to smile, but he didn't press further. I stood up to refill the coffee pot, trying to shake the tension off, but everything felt heavier now. I could feel his eyes on me, respectful, patient, but not indifferent. There was something safe about his presence, and I didn't know if that scared me more than it comforted me. I wasn't the type of person to cross lines. I wasn't the type to entertain strangers. But life isn't always black and white when emotions get tangled in the mix. Especially when the lines in your own life have already started to blur without anyone noticing. Daniel eventually walked over to his tool bag, zipping it up slowly, but he didn't head toward the door. Instead, he hesitated and looked at the rain again. "You sure you'll be all right tonight?" he asked. I wanted to say yes. I really did. But the truth sat in my throat, heavy and unspoken. I had been holding together pieces of a life that looked perfect on the outside but felt hollow inside. And now this quiet, ordinary man with a wrench and a gentle smile had somehow stepped right into that space I'd been hiding for so long. I didn't answer him. Not yet. Because deep down, I knew whatever happened next would be a turning point. Something that couldn't be undone. The silence between us stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thick with something else, unspoken thoughts, questions we didn't know how to ask. I noticed the time on the wall clock. Almost 8 p.m. My partner should have been home by now if not for the delayed flight. That was the 4th time this month. Business trips, back-to-back meetings, last-minute changes, they had all become normal. And I had gotten used to brushing it off, pretending like it didn't sting every time he chose something else over being here. Daniel broke the silence. "You don't have to answer." I've seen that look before. He didn't explain what he meant, but I could guess. There was something lived in about his words, like he'd been on both sides of this kind of moment before. I wanted to ask more about him, but I hesitated. It was easier to keep the focus off myself. I reached for my phone again, scrolling through old photos without really seeing them. There were pictures of my partner and me smiling at family dinners, vacation beaches, celebrations. We looked happy. But when I looked closer, I saw all the space between us. The kind you don't notice in real time. The kind that builds when little things are left unsaid too long. I remembered the last time we had a real conversation. It was more about schedules and chores than feelings. That thought sank in like a cold wave. Daniel finally sat back down and began telling me about a woman he used to be with. "She used to wait for me too," he said quietly. I kept telling myself I was doing everything for us, working late, fixing everyone's problems but my own. One day I came home and she was just done. Not angry. Just empty. He paused, and there was something in his eyes that made me believe every word. Sometimes you don't realize you're losing someone until they're already gone. His story felt too close to mine. Like we were different people walking the same path. The more we talked, the more real everything became. Not in a romantic way, but in a raw, exposed kind of way. I didn't know what to make of it. All I knew was that something had shifted in me tonight, and not because of him, but because I was finally facing what I hadn't allowed myself to admit. That the loneliness hadn't started with his arrival. It had been living here long before the leak. The storm outside had picked up, thunder rumbling in the distance like a warning. The kitchen lights flickered for a second, and we both looked up. I could feel my heart beating faster, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the weight of everything hanging in the air. Daniel stood near the window, arms crossed, watching the rain hit the glass. I stayed seated, pretending to check my phone again, though there was nothing new. No follow-up message. No missed call. Just silence. The more I sat with it, the more it hurt, not because of anything Daniel said, but because of everything my partner didn't. I started to question things I had always brushed off. The late nights. The sudden trips. The growing distance. I remembered the change in his voice lately, more formal, less warm. The way he barely looked up from his laptop anymore, even during dinner. And here I was, in my own home, feeling more seen by a stranger than by the person I was supposed to be building a life with. Daniel shifted, clearing his throat softly. "If you want me to go, just say the word." His tone wasn't pushy. It was respectful, careful. I looked at him, trying to read between the lines. He hadn't made a move, hadn't crossed any line, but the line was already blurred by everything unsaid. My chest tightened. I knew we were at a turning point. If he left now, maybe everything would just go back to how it was. The broken routine. The quiet nights. The pretend peace. But something inside me wasn't sure I wanted that anymore. Then, as if the moment couldn't get more complicated, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time, it wasn't just about the flight. My partner wrote, "We need to talk when I get back. Something's not working anymore." I stared at the screen, not blinking. My throat dried up. My fingers went numb. The words weren't cold, but they weren't warm either. It was like reading a sentence that had been written weeks ago but only now sent. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I turned to Daniel slowly. He was still standing there, still quiet, but his eyes met mine. And in that moment, something shifted, not just between us, but in me. The rain outside grew louder. Inside, the silence grew deeper. We both knew what was coming, but neither of us said a word. Not yet. The rain hadn't let up. It felt like the storm outside was sinking with the one building inside me. I sat frozen, phone still in my hand, the words on the screen echoing in my mind. We need to talk. That phrase never ends with good news. My chest was tight, my thoughts racing, and yet, Daniel stood across from me, steady. A silent witness to something unraveling in real time. I stood up slowly, not even sure why, and walked toward the kitchen window. I needed to move, to breathe. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, tired eyes, a forced calm, and someone I barely recognized. All this time I thought I was holding things together, but maybe I was just holding back from admitting what had already fallen apart. Just as I turned to say something, anything, there was a loud knock at the door. Daniel stiffened. I froze. It was almost 9 p.m. And I wasn't expecting anyone. My mind rushed with possibilities. A neighbor? Delivery? Or him? Another knock. Firmer this time. Daniel looked at me. Want me to get it? I shook my head, heart pounding as I walked toward the door. I didn't ask who it was, I just opened it. And there he was. My partner. Wearing the same gray coat he left in that morning. His suitcase beside him. His face pale, jaw tight, eyes darting behind me straight to Daniel. The silence in the room cracked wide open. He stepped inside slowly, his voice low. I took the earlier flight. Had a feeling. The words hit me like a cold wave. I couldn't move. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Daniel, to his credit, didn't speak. He picked up on everything in an instant, his entire posture shifting into something more guarded. My partner scanned the room, the empty mugs on the table, Daniel's bag by the counter, the still dripping pipe. Everything told a story, even if nothing had technically happened. I see, he said, jaw tightening. You didn't waste any time. That's not fair, I finally managed to whisper, the guilt and panic rising together. He was here for the leak. Oh, sure, he replied with a hollow laugh. And I'm sure it just turned into deep conversation over coffee. You think I haven't noticed things changing? Daniel stepped forward, not to defend himself, but to quietly pack up his things. I think I should go, he said softly, without looking at either of us. But before he reached the door, my partner cut in sharply. No. Stay. You're already part of this, right? Might as well hear it. The tension in the room was unbearable now. I was caught between two versions of my life, one familiar but distant, the other uncertain but oddly grounding. And standing in the middle, all I felt was the weight of every choice I'd avoided until tonight. The worst part was, I hadn't even made a real decision yet. But now it seemed like the decision was coming for me. Whether I liked it or not. The room felt like it was shrinking, every breath heavier than the last. Daniel stood near the door, silent but steady, while my partner's eyes burned into me, waiting for an explanation I wasn't sure I could give. The clock ticked loudly, matching the rapid beat of my heart. I swallowed hard and tried to find words that wouldn't tear everything apart, but the truth was already spilling out between us, raw and undeniable. I didn't plan for any of this, I finally said, voice trembling. It wasn't about him staying. It was about feeling seen, heard, something I haven't felt in a long time. You've been gone so much, and when you're here, it's like we're just strangers living in the same space. My partner's face softened, but there was still a distance I couldn't cross. I know I've been distant, he admitted quietly. Work's been tough. I thought I was doing this for us, but maybe I was just running away. Daniel shifted, and I could see the compassion in his eyes. Sometimes, people don't realize they're breaking something until it's right in front of them, he said. But that doesn't mean it's beyond repair. I looked between them, the man who'd stepped into my apartment to fix a simple leak, and the man I'd promised to build a life with. Both holding pieces of my heart, both part of this tangled mess. For a moment, I wondered if I could hold it all together. If I wanted to. Then my partner took a step forward, lowering his voice. I don't want to lose you. But I can't promise I won't keep getting caught up in things. Maybe we need a break, some space to figure out what we really want. His words stung, but they also brought a strange relief. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was honest. I nodded slowly, feeling a crack in the walls I'd built around myself. Maybe we do. Daniel packed his bag with a quiet dignity. I'll leave you both to it, he said softly, heading to the door. Just before he walked out, he stopped and turned back. By the way, he said with a small, almost mischievous smile, the leak isn't fixed yet. I only tightened the pipe. The real problem is the old valve. You'll need a full replacement soon. I blinked, surprised by the sudden return to plumbing talk. It was oddly comforting, like a reminder that some problems need real attention, not just quick fixes. As the door clicked shut behind him, I felt something shift inside me. The night wasn't over, but the leak, both in the pipe and in my life, had finally been acknowledged. Whether we could fix it or not was still unknown. And just as I reached for my phone to send a message to my partner, a new text popped up. From Daniel. If you ever need a hand, plumbing or otherwise, call me. My breath caught. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and quiet after a night full of heavy truths. The apartment felt different somehow, not fixed, but real. The leak under the sink was still there, a small reminder that not everything could be solved overnight. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to pretend it didn't exist. Sometimes, healing starts with simply acknowledging the cracks. My partner and I sat down over coffee, the silence between us no longer filled with tension but with possibility. We didn't have all the answers yet, and maybe we never would. But we agreed to be honest, to stop running from the issues that had slowly pulled us apart. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. The kind that tests the strength of a relationship, not by how perfect it is, but by how willing both people are to keep trying. Daniel's message stayed on my phone screen, a small spark of unexpected kindness from a stranger who became part of this story. I didn't know what the future held with him, or even with my partner. But I realized that sometimes, the people who come into your life for a moment can remind you of what you've been missing all along: attention, care, and the courage to face difficult truths. That night, I took a deep breath and called a professional plumber to replace the valve. It felt symbolic, like finally committing to fixing not just the leak but everything connected to it. The repairs would take time and effort, just like repairing a relationship. But both were worth it. Looking back, I see now that the leak was more than just water dripping under the sink. It was a sign of neglect, of pain, and of hope waiting beneath the surface. Life isn't perfect, and neither are the people in it. But sometimes, it takes a broken pipe and a delivery guy to remind you that you deserve more than silence and distance. Thank you for listening to this true story about infidelity, choices, and unexpected moments that change everything. If you found this story relatable or thought-provoking, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that touch the heart. Remember, everyone's journey is unique, and sometimes, the hardest leaks to fix are the ones inside us. Stay safe, stay kind, and don't be afraid to face the cracks. It's the first step toward healing. 46.